Okay, hello folks. This is Ari here with Lucas with Accepted by AdmissionPrep. So Lucas is one of our Admission Prep students here who's accomplished some incredible things, and we're so excited to have him here to learn about his experience, what he's coming up to next. And Lucas, I'll pass it over to you first. So do you want to first maybe catch us up on where you're at in your education journey? You've just finished grade 12 with Admission Prep. How did things go? Where are you headed in the fall? What does your situation with post-secondary education look like right now?
Just first of all, I want to just thank you for having me on here. And then, I just want to say, so I'm Lucas Vanderkant, obviously, as you've introduced, born and raised in Toronto. So I just finished grade 12 at De La Salle College, high school. So next year I'm going to be going to Western University. And so I have Ivey AEO status secured. And I'm super happy to have gotten into that. So honestly, back in grade 11, grade 10 even, I never would have thought like any of this would have been possible. And, I always kind of, if you would have told me this is where I was going to be at back then, I would have been like, me? Like, sort of like a regular guy, whatever. Through a lot of hard work and a lot of help along the way, I've kind of realized, I can achieve whatever I strive for. And I think that sort of goes for everyone. But again, I do want to caveat that, like, you need to work hard, but also it really helps to have people alongside you, whether that be your family, your friends, but also I've had the luxury of the admission prep team alongside me all the way. And honestly, that's just been an incredible help. I guess we'll get into that more.
Yeah, I know, that's awesome. I love it. And I'm so glad you're starting off by talking about like the hard work side of it, which I think is so important. And I want to first kick off by asking, you said it, you're like, I accomplished these things and I almost didn't think it was possible. What were your dreams and aspirations when it came to post-secondary education, and how do they compare to where you find yourself today?
I'm going to just take us to midway through or the beginning of grade 11. I'm walking through, school's cafeteria. We're having a bit of a university fair. And I'm just kind of walking around all the stations, all the booths, and I see this table like Ivy, marked Ivy, and I was curious. I was like, "What is this?" It was beside the Western table, and I start talking to the representative there, and they're just sort of explaining the program to me. So like, you could study whatever you want in the first 2 years, and then in third year you start this Ivy school, and they're just explaining to me the education style, what it represents. And I'm hearing all this, and I just remember thinking, like, yeah, that is exactly what I want. This is what I want to do. But then I also remember the flip side of it is, reading after I got home, all the admission requirements, the grades, but also the essays, all that goes with it, and thinking like, man, like this is really a challenge. I'm not sure if this is something that I'm able to achieve. But fast forward to now, with all that's happened, I honestly, it feels like a dream come true. I mean, if you would have told me I would have gotten into this school with an entrance scholarship, I would have said, you're crazy. But as I said before, I mean, it all comes down to hard work and also just those around you that are pushing you up and helping you. And I think that's been the story for me at the end of the day.
No, I love that. And I love you mentioning the community side of things. I think it's incredibly important. It does take a village. It takes, your family, your friends, and, like I said, hopefully, ideally, we're doing a good job with that and supporting you with it as well. It's kind of why we exist. And you mentioned earlier, you had this dream, you saw the booth, and it's actually kind of it's a wonderful story. And then you were faced with the reality of there's a lot to do to improve myself, to get into, the school, the technical side of things, and keeping up with everything as well. The transition from everyday high school work to the reality of I want to go to a top university and all the work you have to do, it's pretty challenging. So what were some of your biggest fears or challenges as you were entering this world of essays, interviews, and working on your profile and trying to be that type of individual they're looking for at these schools?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, that individual that they're looking for. So you feel like there's something that they're looking for, but you also want to be genuine and be yourself. So I think at first I was nervous. I've always been, comfortable with interviews, and I've always felt that I've been able to portray myself better than in an interview setting than, through writing an essay. But I also, at the same time, was worried, how am I going to, share my story, and how am I going to encompass everything that I want to tell them? Because it's, you need to obviously display what you've done, what extracurriculars, what volunteer, everything like that. But it's not just about like a numerical list. You need to put it together in a story that shows who you are as a person for any scholarship, any school that you're applying for. And that was honestly what made me pretty nervous. I didn't know how I was going to do that. I didn't know if I could do that alone. And also just this overall sense of being overwhelmed, which I think was not unique to me. Most people I spoke to, friends and peers, felt the exact same way. It's a lot coming at you all at once. There's schools, there's scholarships that you're applying for, but then you're also, you're in grade 12, you're trying to maintain those marks. That's also very crucial, all at the same time while you're trying to write essays and do interviews.
Yeah.
It's tricky, and I just felt overwhelmed at the beginning. And yeah, I think it was definitely a challenge.
And how did you overcome that, or what steps did you take to make it more manageable? Because it is overwhelming, and it's a lot for a lot of students to navigate.
I think first of all, it's tough. As I've said a few times already now, it's tough to do alone. So with admission prep, I started working with them in grade 11. So I guess we'll get into that a bit later too. But um, they really helped me. My advisor really helped me formulate a plan, and I think that is sort of extremely important. Is get a plan down and start focusing on what you're going to work on. There's a lot to do, there's a lot of things to prepare for. You're not going to tackle it all at once. You need a step-by-step plan. You need to go at it in such a way where you're taking down things one at a time. Obviously, as I said, maintaining that average in grade 12 is also tricky. So you're doing all of this while also studying for tests, doing assignments. But I realized that like having a plan and being structured and organized was really helpful for me. So, and again, that was not something that I'm going to take full credit for at all. But you know, that is, I think, ultimately what led to my success is because I think when you have a plan in place and you sort of know what you need to do, what steps you need to follow to accomplish that goal and follow that plan, that is extremely helpful with anything.
Yeah,
So,
totally. And I think you hit the nail on the head. And it's exactly that, right? We're hoping to obviously support you with learning the skills to get into your good school, and you do it in a way where it's genuine to you. But what's really important is a lot of the skills you pick up along the way, which I think a lot of achieving any goal in life. And I'm sure when you're off at university or maybe grad school, but wherever your plans may look like in the future, and we'll probably talk about that in a little bit too. That ability to set a goal, have a clear plan, and calmly just proceed through it is so critical, and it's something we want to teach every young person, right? Except once you realize that it's almost like a superpower. I'm sure you feel that way, where you're like, I can just break it into a plan and just do it, and then I can get results, right? It's kind of like having a superpower. And at what point did you decide to seek guidance for your applications, and what led you to choose admission prep?
yeah, so I think it was about in maybe early grade 11, late grade 10. And, credit to my mom. She was always really,
Mom's the best.
for sure. I mean, she's always really pushing me, and I knew I wanted to apply for scholarships. I had, these top choices in mind, but I really didn't know like how to even go about applying for things at all, especially scholarships. And so me and my mom both actually saw an advertisement for admission prep, and so we just joined an informational Zoom call one night, and we heard what they had to say and sort of realized, like this is something that's going to be extremely helpful to me at this in the spot that I'm at, and this is something that we want to go ahead and go forward with. Because, the two of us can only do so much, and we only know so much. So yeah, it was a no-brainer.
Okay, that's awesome. I love that. And I also want to, you mentioned it. The grade 11 period, it's kind of that you're in grade 11 and it hits you, oh, this is getting kind of real. So at the time of us chatting, there's a couple months when applications open for these grade 11 students that are entering grade 12. You're going off to Western Ivy with AEO status and you've got an entrance scholarship. What advice do you have for students that are in that grade 11 period about to enter grade 12 and be in the thick of things? What should they be doing to get into their dream school?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, trust what you have done so far. But also, what I would say is it's not too late to, if maybe if you feel that you're not exactly at a place that you want to be, it's not too late. Like there is still time. And I'll just maybe share a quick story here. So when I started with admission prep, it was midway through grade 11, and me and my advisor were kind of trying to put together a story. And we actually did realize, credit to him, he realized, this is looking good, but you're not there yet. There is, you need something to just crown it all off, maybe a leadership activity that can crown it all off. And we started thinking, and I was like, you know what, I want to do something that encompasses me as a person. So I've always been um, big into working out, into fitness. And so I decided I'm going to start a fitness club at my school for younger students, get them active. And this was super difficult. I mean, just going through with it, getting the permission from all the administration, the principal, teachers to sign off on it, and then actually running the club once it did get born into fruition. But that would be my advice: is it's not too late. If you feel that you're not exactly where you want to be, you need to go out there and make things happen. And it's going to be hard. It's going to take hard work, but you have time and you can do it.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you mentioned that. And you've said it a couple times now, the word story. And I want to just hear from you a little bit on that. We get so many students that are so concerned about resumes and resume stuffing. And you've mentioned the importance of a story. I guess, how important is that ability to not just do great things? So you did awesome things, right, to help your community, but the ability to convey that, right? How important is that? And what advice do you have for students that are maybe concerned about, they're just trying to stuff their resume because they don't know they're trying to do it all? What advice would you have for them?
No, absolutely. That's a great point. I mean, it's not, at the end of the day, I just don't think it's about doing everything. I think it's about doing things with meaning that, contributes to you as a person. I think at the end of the day, you need to be genuine because schools see it a million times. Students who've done A, B, and C, they've done everything. They've done sports, they've done clubs, they've done volunteering. They know that, like they see that. That's nothing new to them. But if you can actually establish yourself as someone who's not done something, but built a story that really works with them, I think that can set you apart. You want to stay true to yourself and you want to do things that genuinely do help your community, but also are things that you believe in and doing things through things that you are passionate about. I truly think that's the easiest way to make a difference and the easiest way to stand out in any sort of an admission situation. Because when you're talking about things that you're passionate about, it's just so much easier because you do have genuine love for those things. And that's honestly, I think, I'll attribute a lot of my success to that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because we always tell students it's not just about doing the work. It's so much easier when you care about it, and we always. So I'm glad it's going to be you telling them and not us. So I'm really glad that's awesome. So we have you here, and I want to now ask you, what changes did you specifically make to your application strategy with Admission Prep's guidance that you weren't making before? I'm curious to see how things evolved.
Yeah. So first of all, I do want to say, absolutely, I did make a lot of changes. That is, that's for sure. So we started focusing, as I said, I think the importance of just putting it all together. I was
Right.
sort of focused on, doing this, doing that. Even if these things are genuinely things that I'm passionate about, I wasn't really, I didn't really know how to put everything together. Because when you're in situations, when you're doing interviews, when you're writing essays, it's easy enough to just list out things that you've done. And, obviously it's important to be passionate about these things, but it's only going to get you so far if you can't just put them together in a compelling way. So I think that was the approach that my advisor really started guiding me towards, and just started helping me to craft that story. And then the other thing is, which I talked about a little bit before, but I want to stress, is that I just felt so much more organized with admission prep. I mean, that was, I think, the biggest change in approach is that, you have an advisor who's not only there supporting you, but, they are also going to make sure you have deadlines, there are tasks to complete, there are things to do, and they're going to hold you accountable. And that's so important because that's maybe not something that you're doing on your own or with your parents. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you mentioned that part. It's sometimes not all sunshine and rainbows with oh, we work with an advisor and you're gonna have a plan. Sometimes it's a push and a pull of, well, Lucas, you said you'd get this done, so when can you
Yeah.
do this? Because it's not done again, and now it's the second time, and someone has to do that, and we're happy to take that off the parents' plates. Is
Yeah.
what the parents sometimes tell us. And I want to now ask you, you've accomplished so much, and honestly, it's so lovely to hear you speak as well as like a young adult who's grown as a person about what you've accomplished, what you've learned. Because that's a big part of what we're trying to do. Is it's more than just getting into a school. But I want to ask you: were there moments when you felt in the process you might not succeed? What were those moments, and what kept you persevering?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, a big thing that I think a lot of students will relate to is, when you're applying and you're doing all this, just hearing other students talk about, what they've done, what they've accomplished, what grades they had, and you're kind of thinking about yourself and how you stack up, and you're like, oh, I'm not so sure that I have a chance, I'm not so sure that I can do this. And there was times for sure that I felt that way. My confidence was waning for sure. And I was thinking, maybe I'm not meant for this, for these programs that I think I am, because there's so many other great people here. And I think, that was a time for me that was a little bit tricky. And
Hmm.
my advisor was actually one of the big people to pull me out of this hole and just sort of remind me, um, you know, everybody has their plan, everybody has their story, what they've done, but it's important that you need to just focus on yourself, what you've done, and keep working hard. My advisor would always remind me about this. There's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be other people out there that maybe seem more qualified than you, but that doesn't matter. You need to stay true to yourself. You need to keep working hard. We have a goal in place. We have steps. We have things, deadlines that we want to get things done. And if you just keep on working towards that goal, you're gonna get to a place that you want to be. And that was just so important for me.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned that. I think we speak to a lot of students and admissions professionals and folks. I think you're one of the people that have mentioned that almost imposter syndrome of am I good enough when you're applying? And what advice do you have for the students that are heading into application season and maybe they're thinking, I don't know, everyone's so accomplished or so great, maybe I'm not good enough, which isn't like the most, it's a hard mindset to overcome.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for that student having gone through that yourself?
Yeah. First of all, I think that you're not alone in thinking that. I think that many people feel that way. I know I have for sure. And the other thing too is that, you might actually fail. You might actually get rejected from certain things at times. I mean, I know I was the first thing that I heard from was the TD scholarship, and I was rejected. That was the first scholarship or school I heard back from, and my heart kind of sank. I was like, is this, the first of many rejections to come? But you have to just, you need to stay focused and remember that, even when these rejections do come, even when you do feel that imposter syndrome, you're not good enough, maybe there's better people out there, you know, use that to fuel you, if anything. I mean, you just stay focused, keep working hard. And again, with admission prep, it's way easier when you have a plan in place and you have steps in place. And it kind of just helps you realize, like, if you just follow these steps that you and your advisor have carefully set out for yourself, you're going to be okay. Like, you're going to reach your goal. And at the end of the day, whatever your goal is for you, just do whatever you can, work your hardest in order to get to that goal, and just know that you can accomplish amazing things if you put in that work at the end of the day,
Yeah.
would be my advice.
Love that. And yeah, that's really, really well said. And I'm also wondering, we hear this sometimes from students, especially the ones they struggle, the ones who've really accomplished a lot. Students who have accomplished a lot in their high school career and have these big ambitions sometimes struggle with the concept of failing because they're not used to failing or getting rejected.
Mhm.
Did you go through that? Because you also, had good grades, you were a high achiever. How do you navigate that? Maybe it's the first time they've been rejected. Maybe it's the first time they've failed because they've been a high achiever all throughout high school. So what advice do you have there? How'd you handle that?
No, absolutely. I mean, as I said, the first scholarship or program I heard back from was a rejection. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, that was one of the first times that I'd kind of um, seen that email come in, you're rejected, and it definitely takes a shot at you. You know, you kind of feel like, oh, okay, so these people didn't think that, I was good enough for them. But you need to be able to find your self-worth within yourself, not within what any other program or people put onto you. At the end of the day, if they didn't choose to accept you, then you need to think about it. That's their loss. That's how you should think about it. It's not anything you could have done. You did everything. If you were working hard, you did everything that you needed to. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's how the dice lands. I mean, sometimes not everyone is going to maybe have space for you or want to accept you at a certain time. There are going to be failures, but at the end of the day, you need to learn from these failures, because if you never fail, you're never going to learn. And if you never learn, how can you ever get better, right? So I think that's what I kind of took from it, is these failures, these rejections that I had at the beginning of the journey. I'm grateful for them now, because maybe not at the time, but now I realize that they were a step in the right direction. They were just steps along my journey to reaching my eventual goal. And I think that for everyone, there is going to be failure, and you need to take that in stride and learn from it.
Yeah, totally. And it worked out pretty okay despite a couple failures along the way, hey?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. And before I go into my last one or two questions, I actually forgot to ask you. You won some entrance awards. How much did you win in scholarships?
Yeah, so I won the Western Scholarship of Distinction. So that one was I think 3,500, and then I'm still waiting on a couple external scholarships. I did hear back from the VASF scholarship, which was an additional 3,500 as well. Um, and yeah, so still waiting on a couple, but yeah, I'm thrilled to with what I've gotten so far. It's more than I ever really thought would be possible.
That's awesome. That's great. I realized I just totally skipped over that part, so that's just my fault.
No, no
It's all
worries.
good. And now, to reflect on your journey, how do you feel about your journey from start to this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I kind of mentioned, this was a goal of mine for a long time, and I think, at the end of the day, this journey has really taught me to just always trust and believe in myself, and just always understand that, I am capable of accomplishing whatever I put my mind to. I think there's been a lot of ups and downs throughout the journey. That has been, the upper years of high school, but I think at the end of the day, it just really, I can't stress enough. If you put in 100% of your effort, you will be 100% rewarded, because I think at the end of the day, that is what it comes down to. If you're putting in your best effort, then, good things come to those who wait, but also to those who work hard. And I just think that I can't say enough about that. I mean, I know that's sort of cliche. A lot of people mention that, working hard, but at the end of the day, there's no better formula to success, and that is the case at the end of the day.
Love it. And you mentioned those rewards. it's all the things you mentioned. It's getting into your schools. It's maybe the scholarships. It's also the failures. The failures are also rewards for you to learn how to handle them, and even the maybe the stress of not knowing if you can make a deadline or if you're going to get it. That is also a reward because by beginning to actually put in the effort and knowing you gave it your all, you have the benefit of knowing how to handle that situation because it'll happen when you apply for your first job or maybe different programs along the way. So totally, really, really well said. My last question for you today, Lucas, is if you had to select one word to describe your journey with admission prep, what would you choose and why?
Hmm. That's an interesting one. So I think the word that just comes to mind for me is rewarding. I think all throughout the process, obviously, and it goes without saying that the final results that I've seen have been rewarding, but I think I look at that word and that describes the entire journey along the way. It's been rewarding. And as you mentioned, I mean, there's going to come times in the future in my life where I might take things that I've learned within this process and apply them to there. So I think the journey has just been really rewarding, and also because it's allowed me to learn about myself more, and just sort of understand things about myself that I might not have understood before. And so absolutely, I think that word encompasses this journey as a whole.
Love it. Well, Lucas, thanks so much for coming by and sharing your wisdom. Truly, it genuinely was quite wise. I really enjoyed it. I think it's going to help a lot of parents and students out. And I think everything you shared from the failures to obviously the successes. And I love that we talked about the hard times as well, because it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And in fact, it's how you tackle the arduous and boring parts of it that matters more. I'm so glad we talked about that. But thank you for your time and a pleasure. And we cannot wait to see what you do next. And Western, as you mentioned, they're lucky to have you.
Thank you. Absolutely. And thank you for having me. It was great to share my story, and thank you so much for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.